Supervisor Bill Horn answers questions about the religious foundation he used for proceeds from his land deals. The state attorney general investigates the finances of the San Diego Opera. And we've learned much since the 2007 wildfires, but what more do we need to learn from last week's blazes? I'm Alison St. John, and the KPBS Roundtable starts now. Welcome. It's Friday, May 23rd. I'm Alison St. John, and joining me on today's roundtable are inewsource investigative reporter Brad Racino, Tony Perry, San Diego bureau chief for the Los Angeles Times, and KPBS arts reporter Angela Carone. Now, KPBS partner inewsource has looked into a charity that San Diego County Supervisor Bill Horn used as an escrow account for his real estate deals. Horn says he used it to fund charities in Mexico and South America. The investigation raises questions about Horn's use of the foundation as a way to avoid taxes. All this is in the context of Horn currently campaigning for a sixth term on the County Board of Supervisors. He's held that office for 20 years. So, Brad, you're the one who's done this investigation. Tell us about this Basic Faith Foundation and when he acquired it and why.
Sure. Basic Faith Foundation is a nonprofit, a 501c3, and according to Horn, he acquired it. He says he bought it, but he acquired it in the late 70s or early 80s. Paperwork shows it was around 1979. And what it was a different nonprofit called the Sojourners Foundation. It was owned by a family up in Orange County that Horn has had some land dealings with over the past few decades. And he says he took it over in the early 80s and he used it to hold money from his various real estate transactions. He's a broker. He was and still is a real estate broker. So he would use this as a way of deferring capital gains, and then he would send the interest that these accounts earned to, he says, orphanages and missionaries in Central America and South America.
So apparently he told you himself that it was a way that helped him avoid paying some taxes. How does he justify this legally? Well,
he says it's a 1031 exchange, and this is kind of an IRS thing that took some getting to know. I had to speak with some experts to explain what this is, and it's a totally legal way of taking money and from a land sale, putting it into an account, and holding it there until you buy another piece of land. It's a way of not having to pay taxes on the gains that you would get from selling that land. But what all our experts told us is that you can't use a nonprofit for this kind of thing, and if you are to do this thing, it needs to be an independent agent that holds that money. It needs to be another real estate broker, a bank, a lawyer, an accountant, but it cannot be an organization that you control yourself. It needs to be an independent entity.
Okay, so I mean, a lot of nonprofits are tax-free. So what is it specifically about this foundation and the way he was using it that makes it not legal as a way to avoid taxes?
Well, according to the experts that we interviewed, there were quite a different number of ways that it violated state and federal laws. One being that he never filed these Form 990s with the IRS, which are these annual disclosure statements that every nonprofit has to file if you're a private foundation. And if you're a public, should back up, there's public and private. We, like inewsource, KPBS, we're public nonprofits. Private are the kinds that are owned by one person or a family or a foundation. Horn says that was not the case with Basic Faith, that it was a public charity. But he also says in another sentence that he didn't want people to find this organization, that he didn't get money from donors, that it was a personal thing he used. So either way, according to our experts, he would have had to file these 990s with the IRS. There were some other things about it not being up to snuff with, according to our experts, the possibility that he used it to sponsor a political candidate in 2000 when he had Alan Keyes come in and speak at Basic Faith Foundation's National Day of Prayer event featuring Alan Keyes. Then there are some other things and details that we get into in the story about it.
Now, he did close it a couple of years ago, I understand. Why?
It was dissolved in 2012. He told us it was because he didn't need it anymore. But according to records that we found with the IRS and the Secretary of State, the IRS revoked Basic Faith's tax-exempt certification in 2010 for failing to file these 990 forms for 3 years in a row. So they took away that exemption, and for those 2 years in between, it was almost like a corporation. It was supposed to pay taxes. There was a state franchise tax board lien against Basic Faith for about $1,400 that we found in 2012, and a few months after that is when he dissolved it. So he told us it was because he didn't need it anymore.
One of the things I think that is so interesting about this is that in your conversation with Horn himself, his understanding of what he's done here seems to be very like this is all legitimate, almost like this is a tip, like this is what I did, look how clever this is. I mean, can you give us a sense of what his understanding of what he did is?
Yeah, and usually as reporters, when we go into these situations, we don't know what the person is going to be like, if they're going to clam up, if they're not going to do the interview. He was very open about all of this. He sat down and laid out the facts. He gave us details about certain things as if it was yesterday, and he didn't find anything wrong with it. And at the time, we just kind of listened to what he said and took the transcription, then gave it to the experts, and the experts are the ones that all found what was wrong with this. But he still believes he did nothing wrong.
Well, it does seem that Bill has a kind of an attitude that says the government has their rules, I have my rules, and I prefer my rules to theirs on occasion. I mean, it does seem to me this story is very much in keeping with what we know of Bill Horn. He speaks his mind, says what he thinks, even if what he thinks isn't really attached to the facts very well sometimes. And he...
it seems like we have had several examples of him cutting ethical corners in the past.
Indeed, and Bill's a bit of a rogue. I mean, he doesn't worry about what the hounds of the press think or some other folks think. His public seems to like him. They've reelected him by smaller and smaller margins, though. And this may be a tough fight with the Oceanside Mayor, Jim Wood.
Well, do you think that his opponent in this election, Jim Wood, the Oceanside Mayor, is a strong enough candidate to even threaten him with this kind of allegation in the air?
Only if there is also a sense of enough is enough. You've done 20. Let's let you go up to Valley Center and live in retirement on your farm. If there's that, this might influence it. But starting from zero, in other words, if he's already solid with his people and had his re-election ground game working, I would not think this would be enough. The history of San Diego certainly doesn't suggest that journalism stories push people out of office. We had a mayor once who was on trial and he was re-elected, for example. Now, if something comes of this, if it moves from journalism to law enforcement, whole nother matter.
Well, that leads to the question as to, there's no documentation, right? I mean, how could anyone investigate this further?
Well, they could subpoena bank records if it was the Attorney General, the DA. If they wanted to look into this, they could use everything in their power to kind of go back in history and look at the checkbooks. As far as other records, I mean, if he did, in fact, destroy them, then they're gone. We don't know.
And one of the things that I found particularly interesting, troubling, etc., was that he doesn't remember where this charitable money went to, these Mexican and South American, was it, charities, orphanages. Where were they? There don't seem to be any records. That seems to me the kind of thing that some other folks might get quite interested. In other words,
it's very interesting that currently he has the neighborhood reinvestment funds, which all the supervisors have to contribute to nonprofits, and he gives them to boys and girls clubs. He's skirted the law a bit there by donating that money sometimes to pro-life groups, and so he's had to change his focus. But he is not currently donating to anything south of the border. Did he explain why he chose to contribute to nonprofits in other countries?
No, and he didn't give us the name of one of them. He did mention trucking lumber down to Ensenada to help build houses, but he didn't mention the name of that charity or who that was through. And then we did send just 2 specific questions as a follow-up through Horn's lawyer, and asking that same question, where did this money go? Can you just name one charity or organization? And they didn't respond to that question.
So what could the penalties be if anything was discovered in terms of an offense? Is it a civil or a criminal offense?
According to our experts and the former head of the IRS Tax-Exempt Organization Division, he told us that there's criminal and there's civil. Civil, you're talking about all kinds of penalties. He listed, I think, 5 or 6, failing to keep books and records, failing to file tax returns, unpaid income tax, self-dealing taxes, mandatory distribution taxes, and then IRS penalties, which in some cases can be up to 200% of the amount at hand. And then if we're talking criminal, if there was intent, there would be the possibility of jail time.
So are the attorneys who are representing him, are they putting forward any arguments as to why they believe that he is not in trouble here?
Right, yeah. His attorney is a man named Jim Sutton. He's up in San Francisco. He's represented a lot of high-profile politicians. He helped get Kamala Harris elected, as well as Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom, Leland Yee. So he wrote to us the other day and listed 5 responses to the 5 main parts of our story. And his explanation was he didn't have to file 990s, that Horn himself got approval from the IRS back in the 80s, I guess, that it was okay to use this nonprofit as a 1031 tax-free exchange.
Though he doesn't have any documentation,
no documentation about it. And a couple other things, that it was okay for Alan Keyes to come speak because, to his knowledge, Basic Faith was not promoting Alan Keyes as a candidate, even though Horn told us, I'm sorry, Alan Keyes didn't win. He's kind of taken point by point some of the things we've said, but we stick by our story.
But the 5 legal experts that you consulted all said they'd never seen anything like this.
According to your reporting, it seems the attorney was also saying, well, Bill kind of got it wrong, and he kind of was saying what Bill meant to say, what Bill should have said. A smart attorney. But it does talk about Bill's, maybe he's too candid sometimes.
Well, and that's the other interesting thing about this is that he's saying he doesn't remember that this was a very long time ago, and then in another sentence he'll go on to give specific details about what Horn actually meant took place 20 or 30 years ago. That kind of seems interesting.
Convenient memory. Okay. Well, thank you for that investigation. Very interesting and worth somebody looking into more. If publicity is the mother's milk of success, the San Diego Opera is doing well. It remains in the headlines with intrigue and uncertainty surrounding its future. The latest news this week is that the State Attorney General has launched an investigation into its finances, and questions remain about how former General Director Ian Campbell will be compensated in the future. So, Angela, who pushed for this investigation, and what are they looking into?
Well, a number of people, I've been told, contacted the Attorney General's office and suggested that they look into the opera. State Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez, we know for sure, contacted the Attorney General and urged the office to do a probe. And her concern was basically that the San Diego Opera gets public funds, government funding, and
who actually does provide public funding to the opera, apart from all the private donations?
Right, the city of San Diego, through the Commission of Arts and Culture, the county, the cities of Encinitas and Chula Vista have both given small numbers in comparison for education programs. So they get probably, over the last 5 years, it's been a little over $2 million that they've received in government funding. And the concern that Lorena Gonzalez had was that the opera misrepresented the health of the organization when applying for those government funds.
So what is the current management, how are they reacting to the fact that they're now being investigated?
Right, so it is this whole new organization in some respects. It's a sort of newly configured board, some of whom have been on the board for years, but it's a much smaller board now. And Ian Campbell, the longtime director, and his deputy director, Ann Spira Campbell, who's the chief fundraiser, they are both no longer with the organization. And so there's a new COO. So it's this new organization, and they're saying that they welcome this because they see it as a way to sort of wash away the past, that everything will come to light through this investigation, and that they have nothing to hide, and this is a way to sort of start anew.
But if there is speculation, I mean, what kind of things are people speculating might be worth investigating?
Well, we actually know what the Attorney General is asking for. We have some letters. And so they're asking for things, obviously financial records going back to the year 2009. I mean, the amount of information, first of all, that they're asking for, we're talking hundreds of documents. I was talking with a gentleman this morning who's been through this same kind of thing, and he said, we're talking thousands of bankers' boxes, like a moving truck, who's going to have to pull up to the opera to get the amount of information they've asked for. So documents going back to 2009, just the general ledger, all correspondence related to donations over $5,000. The entire employment compensation history for Ian Campbell and Ann Spira Campbell going back to 1983. Minutes on how the board made decisions around compensation. And then they've also asked for the preservation of all documents within the office, as well as information on personal computers and smartphones and so forth. So a lot of information.
I'm interested. Okay, I'm interested in what they're going to do in 2015. Going to put on 3, scale down.
Jumping ahead. Yeah.
Are we going to get major league productions, or should we get ready for more minor league? I mean, will they be able to attract the talent? I mean, they're going to do La Boheme. They're going to get a major league Mimi so that when Mimi, spoiler alert, doesn't survive, we're all going to be bawling our eyes out? Or are we going to have to say, well, it isn't what it used to be because they can't afford it.
We're really taking this in a new direction. No, that's fine. They are going to do 3 main operas and 1 gala concert. The 3 main operas, the La Boheme, Don Giovanni, and Nixon in China, you know, those operas were actually chosen by Ian Campbell and cast by him. Because remember, they cast singers 2, 3, 5 years out. So the cast for those 3 performances, as I understand it, are the cast that Ian Campbell...
Major league players.
Major league players. Yeah, so there'll be 3 grand, the grand style opera that San Diego Opera has been sort of known for. And then this gala concert, the 4th opera that was in the lineup was just too expensive. It was cost prohibitive. So they're instead doing a gala concert with some of the principals, some of the singers who are going to be
going to do it at the
Symphony Hall.
Symphony Hall. Is that compatible with opera or?
Well, they're
problems?
not going to be using sets. Remember, it's just it's a concert, so they won't have to bring in all of the sets. They'll, you know, and I'm not sure where the orchestra will be, but you're right that Symphony Hall is not necessarily right for staging traditional opera because of the sets and the load-in and where do you put the orchestra, you know, all of that. So, but for a gala concert, they're going to work it out.
And the labor union folks, are they going to lose their jobs, or are they going to be able to keep them, the scene movers and seamstresses and all that?
They are. I don't know for sure the answer to that. I mean, they are going to have jobs. There are
going to be
talks.
a number of layoffs, though. Is that not true?
Yes. So the labor unions are in discussion right now and are willing to take a pay cut of some kind, possibly 10%, as long as those pay cuts are also spread throughout the rest of the organization. The opera is going to lay off employees. That will be announced fairly soon, as I understand. I don't know how many. I know that it's across the organization.
And just in terms of the investigation, is there any chance that if they do find something in the investigation that threatens the whole financial stability of the opera, that this could threaten its future?
Yes, I guess. The answer to that.
Everybody's hoping that it doesn't.
You know, I don't know. I mean, it'll be really interesting to see what they find through this.
And
you know.
Go ahead, Brad.
Do you have any idea how long this usually takes? This kind of investigation? Are we talking weeks, months, a year, more?
Well, I don't know how long these things will normally go. Based on the opera has a month to comply with this request, and then there is even some talk because of the amount of information they have to gather. That there may, you know, they might ask for a delay of some kind, so that could push it back. And then again, going through the amount of this material, I don't have a sense of how long it would take, but it's going to take a while.
And just before we move on, I think, you know, one of the more interesting things that happened this week is that there are negotiations about Ian Campbell, the former director's compensation. Tell us what we know about that so far.
Well, so Ian Campbell's original contract stated that he would be paid through 2017. And when the vote to shut down, which Campbell was a part of urging that process, he would have been paid through 2017. And so there was a lot of speculation that this was so that he could get this big paycheck. What has come to light is an amendment to that original employment agreement that wasn't attached when the document was first leaked to KPBS. So the amendment basically says that his contract goes through, as of 2013, goes through an annual renewal process. So he would only be paid now through the end of 2014. So the financial motive that people were speculating about seems to not be the case.
So it's still very much, and we have to move on here, Tony, so I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it is true, it's a little bit, we're leaving it a little bit up in the air as to Ian Campbell's reputation, and we'll have to just keep following up on that. Yeah. We wanted to get to your topic, Tony, which is the fires. During the recent wildfires in San Diego that burned more than 40 homes, elected officials made a point of reminding us how much better prepared we are to defend ourselves than we were back in 2007. So it's true that in 2007, you know, about 1,700 homes did burn and only 60 or so burned this year. Was it, do you think, to do with how we're prepared, or was it the weather?
It was all of those things and more. Yeah, 2003, 200,000 acres, thousands of homes. 2007, another 200,000 acres, and 1,500 homes. People dead in 2003, for example.
15 people dead in 2003,
Indeed, a lot of improvement in fire protection in both the backcountry, where these recent fires did not begin as the 2003 and 2007 fires did. A lot of enhancements in San Diego and in the suburbs, greater relationship with CAL FIRE, great relationship with the military. You may remember the disputes over why didn't we have military helicopters in '03. This time around, a couple of dozen in the air dropping water on the Cocos fire as well as the military fires on their base. Enormous change. Now, think of it this way. This was round 1, maybe round 2. This is going to be 15 rounds. Fire season now is all year long. Right. 2003, 2007, these were in October. This is May.
Right.
And for whatever reason, climate change, if you will, things have changed, and we're on alerts now forever. Also, this fire occurred by itself. These fires occurred by themselves. Our people were not already fighting fires somewhere else. So we were the big game. Didn't happen in the backcountry. So it happened near municipalities that have fire departments, and boom, they jumped right on it. Now, '03 started in the backcountry on a Saturday afternoon.
We actually have some details about the past fires, so let's just get the statistics right here. So we have the history. In 2003, the Cedar fires, 15 people died, about 2,000 homes destroyed, 300,000 acres burned. 2007, Witch Creek and Harris fires, 7 people died. 1,200 homes destroyed, again about 300,000 acres burned. And then in this one we just had 1 fatality, about 62 homes were destroyed and 26,050 acres burned. So the points that you're making are all very well taken. It was a lot lower numbers, but we're earlier in the year.
Months earlier.
And so the fact that we were able to draw on all these other
and the wind, while very
teams.
challenging, wasn't at all like 2007, where embers were flying horizontal at 50 miles an hour, and it was nearly impossible to catch up with them. So again, rounds 1 and 2, but we're looking at 15 rounds against a deadly, voracious, implacable, cruel enemy, and that enemy is Mother Nature. She's a tough old girl, and she's going to be around the rest of the year. So let's come back here on Christmas Eve and see how well we did. Lots of improvement, but even the people who've worked very, very hard for a lot of years to improve fire protection, Supervisors Ron Roberts, Supervisor Diane Jacob, say we need more. We need more. Jacob says we need more people. Some of these agencies have to hitch up their boots and pay for more boots on the ground.
And the
Roberts
fact is
more
we voted against
equipment.
paying more taxes in 2008.
And this is where we pay the price for this libertarian theme park of ours. Voters have failed to endorse at least 3 measures after the '03 and '07 fires that would have provided better fire protection. That protection that we have, that enhancement, has had to come by nicking the budget of other things. San Diegans will not vote in sufficient numbers for fire protection. That's been the history.
And yet Diane Jacobs said at the news conferences we've spent $280 million since then, but maybe that's not as much as it sounds when you look at the challenge.
Well, if your house burns down, it's that they've spent that doesn't mean anything, but it's a lot of money they've had to nick from other things in a budget, but is it enough? We'll see. Again, let's come back on Christmas Eve and talk about it.
Angela.
So are other areas of Southern California, so like LA, for example, I mean, how do we compare in terms of financial support for
We don't. We just do not. We're the only big county that does not have its own county fire department. Yes, we have a county fire authority that tries to knit together these small agencies, but we don't have what all the other big counties have. We don't have a fleet of tankers and such like LA does. Yes, we have helicopters, didn't have them in '03, had them in '07, have a better agreement with the military. We're still way behind other places. We're way ahead of where we were. We're still a way behind our neighbors to the north.
And Brad?
How much money are we talking about here? Like, how much is needed to be on par with these other counties? Are we talking billions, or
a whole bunch? And we're probably so far behind, we'll never catch LA, Orange, Ventura. That's just not going to happen. But we could do more, according to the supervisors. Ron Roberts makes the point that when we call firefighters in who are off duty to add to the ranks, we don't have equipment for all of them. We have enough for the average number we need every day, but he says 2/3 of all firefighters are off duty at any given time, of course.
And the other thing is, of course, something you're very familiar with, Tony, is the military. We're not at war this time, so they threw in a lot of helicopters.
And also they had their own fires. They had 21,000 acres of brush up there, no structures. So they had their own assets, as they say, in the air. Again, an agreement with the military. Didn't have that agreement in '03. Boy, was their anger between the civilian authorities and the military that went on for years. Much better agreements and personal relationships with CAL FIRE.
But let's hope at least that we won't be at war this summer, so we can rely on them again,
Christmas
presumably.
Eve, I want to be back here.
Okay, Tony, thank you so much. That wraps up another week at the KPBS Roundtable. Thank you to inewsource investigative reporter Brad Racino, Tony Perry, San Diego bureau chief for the Los Angeles Times, and KPBS arts reporter Angela Carone for joining me. And a reminder, you can see more about the stories we discussed today on our KPBS website, kpbs.org. I'm Alison St. John. Thanks for joining us today on the KPBS Roundtable.